Hello adventurers, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm super excited because we are in Anadarko, Oklahoma, and we're about to check out a very unique stop that is absolutely free. I'm super excited about this one because the city of Anadarko not only has a visitor center, but also is the home of something very special. This is the National Hall of Fame for Famous American Indians. Got the van all parked, about to go inside, and then we're gonna take a little walk in the outdoors. Now it is a hot day here, so I have my neck fan. I am preparing for the outdoors, and I'm very excited because outside they have a walk of all of the famous faces and names that we have heard in Native American history. And so this is going to tie together a lot of different pieces of our travels, but I'm going to start off right outside of the visitor center at this bust right behind us. This man right here is Logan Billingsley, and he's a patron of the arts and the founder of the National Hall of Fame here. And in fact, this bust is just one of many that we will be seeing today. Now, this was originally founded in 1952, but has continued to improve throughout the years. So I've never been here before, and I'm really excited to experience this for the first time ever with you all. So with that said, I'm gonna move inside and see what's going on before we take our little walk around and use our neck fan to keep a little bit cooler. Okay, so inside they have a brief kind of idea as to some of the things you can do in the Anadarko area, and I was able to pick up some pamphlets of some other different museum kind of areas that we could go to. Oh my goodness, such great tourism information inside, but then also you have a glance at what you're going to be experiencing as you walk around in way of the statues. Wow, the bronze work is so amazing, and Sitting Bull's actually in here along with some others. It's beautiful, intricate, detailed artwork through these bronze casts. But also, another thing that I noticed is each one of them has a plaque that tells us who they are, what they've done, and also what makes them a part of this particular installation. So as we go, we're going to be walking around a very large loop that is riddled with all sorts of interesting, fascinating brain wrinkles and unique people. And I cannot wait to see a few of these because looking on at the field, it's just super impressive. And they have an area beyond the fountain down here that is filled with room for expansion. So this will be an ongoing project for years and years to come. And I think that that's really nice. So without further ado, let's move forward and see some of the famous Native American faces. Now, as I go through these, the names are actually printed on each one of the plaques, and then also a pronunciation key. So I'm going to go by this. If I am wrong, please do not be upset. This one is Osceola, and this one actually says that they held a home in Florida as the war chief. And here you can find the actual bust itself. Here we have Will Rogers. He was actually Cherokee and was born in 1879 and lived to 1935. He was a world famous actor, humorist, writer, and philosopher. This is Jose Maria. He was the Anadarko chief and was the principal chief to all Caddo tribes and led them from the Brazos River in Texas in 1859 to the site that is now called Anadarko, Oklahoma. Before us we see First Lieutenant Pascal Pouya, and he was actually born in 1921 and was considered to be the most decorated Indian soldier in the United States history. He was honored by receiving 42 awards and medals. Wow. Now again, I'm just touching on some of these. There are so many, and you're just lining this beautiful sidewalk area with glorious stories of triumphant people who have made a difference and an impact in not only their individual tribes, but in the broader picture of things as a whole. So it's pretty neat to be able to see not only, you know, the tribal leaders, but also those who have served our country. And several of the other people who we'll see along the way have also had fabulous contributions. So places like this are really fabulous, not only for the exercise that they provide with these nice big walking paths, but also through the brain wrinkles that we get from learning about our neighbors just a little bit more. This is Mr. John Ross, who was born in 1790 and passed away in 1866. He was the most notable chief of the Cherokees and served as a leader and a statesman for half of a century. This is Stand Watie, and he was actually a beloved Cherokee chief, and he served during the Civil War and was considered to be one of the last Confederate leaders to actually surrender. Muriel Wright was an Oklahoma author and historian. She was born in 1889, passed away in 1975, and was a teacher and researcher. She worked for the Oklahoma Historical Society, researching and writing the history and language of the Cherokee, Choctaw, and Chickasaw. Also the Creek and the Seminole. This is amazing. This woman preserved the history of so many through her research. And Miss Allen Brown Davis was a Seminole chieftain. She was an educator, humanitarian, and interpreter. This is Kicking Bird, and he was the principal chief of the Kiowas. And what many people do not understand is that a lot of the communities in Oklahoma are named after famous Native Americans, like Tishomingo. Tishomingo was actually noted as the war chief of all the Chickasaws, and he was an advisor and leader in the Treaty of the Pontotoc. And also, he was a part of the final removal of the tribes to the west. We can learn a lot from places like this. Even though each bust only has a small written piece, we get to know more about the communities, the people, and also the contributions that they have. And I think that that's pretty great. I think that outdoor spaces like this are just as important as interior museums that give us the more detailed responses to things that were going on and were timely. Because here we get to see how all of the nations kind of come together in one place. This is one that is very familiar to all of us. This is Sacagawea, or Sacagawea, and she was actually a Shoshone girl who led the Lewis and Clark expedition to the Pacific. But more so, this resonates with my channel specifically because when we were in Wyoming, we went to what is presumed to be her final resting place. At the end of the day, all the places that I visit tie together in some interesting way to tell the bigger picture and story. And so I find it fascinating whenever I do come to a place like this where you can see so many of the stories kind of culminate into one thing. I love to dive into brain wrinkles that have to do with our history and the people, and I think that this is a fascinating place. But I'm not finished yet. I'm going to show you a few more of these. As you can see here, this one is Victorio, and he was an Apache chief, and his name actually meant the triumphant one. Victorio's mission was to strive against all odds to protect his people, and because of that he became known for his tactical war skills. If you have heard of Tinker Base in Oklahoma, meet Major General Clarence L. Tinker, an Osage man born in 1887, and he lived until 1942. He was known as the commanding general of the U.S. Air Force in Hawaii. However, he was lost in battle in the Battle of Midway in the Pacific Ocean. I think when we come to places like this, it really expands our knowledge of the people and kind of takes us out of a narrow focus, which so often is painted through historic places. Like, for example, when we go to a museum, a lot of times we talk about the indigenous people in their earliest times, but it doesn't really update us as to what's going on now and the amazing accomplishments, because we're so focused on that one piece of history. But that one piece of history spawned everything that's happened since, including people serving in the military, people doing amazing things, inventing things, creating music, and also having professions that really put them into a place where they can excel. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to celebrate. Our differences are what make us unique and special, and through learning about each of our differences, we become better people as a whole. And so I love to see all of the success of all of the Native Americans that are here, but there's so many more that are still thriving and being successful in our everyday lives that we just don't necessarily talk about because they don't have a sculpture or bust. So get to know your neighbors. This is Stumbling Bear, and he was known also as Bear That Is Throwing. He was a Kiowa chief, and he lived between 1832 and 1903. This was Little Raven. He was the chief of the Southern Arapaho, and he was considered to be brave in war, and he was a tribal religious leader. This is Santanta, and he was also known as White Bear. He was a Kiowa war chief, and he was the most illustrated and colorful of all of the Indian leaders in the Southwest region. It also goes on to say that he was a signer of the Medicine Lodge treaties, which benefit the nations even today, and they have several of his offspring below. Now this one is a little bit harder to see, but etched into the bronze there is actually what looks to be an Olympic symbol. And that's because this is actually a Hopi Olympian. It says here that this is Louis Tawinama, and it was actually a person who did some amazing things during the Stockholm Olympics. In fact, he received a silver medal, and that is so fabulous. Not to mention, it says that he went on to win more as a track and field athlete as a part of his school. In fact, it says that beyond that, he also went on to be recognized in the Arizona Sports Hall of Fame as well. So that's pretty neat. This is Cochise. Cochise was a Chiricahua Apache chief, and unfortunately he was accused falsely of kidnapping, and members of his tribe were killed by soldiers. Now, I have learned a lot about the story of Cochise at other locations, and in this particular scenario, he was actually accused of kidnapping people, and he had not done that. And they tried to communicate in a way that was straightforward and say, no, you didn't get that right, you're wrong. And instead of taking their word for it or even coming into their village to see, they instead invaded them and murdered a lot of people who were very innocent, who had nothing to do with anything. And later it was determined through a lot of different paperwork that we've seen at several museums that this was a planned attack the whole time, and that this was just a way to weaken Cochise. As a result, he became a bitter enemy, and he made it a point to try to set right the wrongs that had been committed against he and his people. And I think that stories like this are normally the stories that we see, unfortunately, the really bad stuff that's happened. But this is a place of celebration, not necessarily one of that sadness. And so as we come here and honor these wonderful, incredible people, we have the joy, and we get to see how much that they have done for their own communities. And we can all take away a few messages from that. But there's a few more down here, and then we'll move on to our next adventure. But I have a couple more that I want to show you. Come on, let's go. Here we have Geronimo. Geronimo has been a subject of many of the stories that I have found at various museums. And there's some pretty interesting facts to know about Geronimo. Geronimo was another one who was fiercely protective of his people, and throughout the tragedies that happened in his life, he took on the flag of "I will protect and I will make sure that this does not happen again." In fact, his family was murdered, and in doing so, it turned him into a person who had a lot to say about how that had happened. And so he went and turned vigilante in some circumstances that forced him to continue to have to move to evade being taken in. And in doing so, it ended up resulting badly for him and his people ultimately. But Geronimo has been a huge piece of Western history throughout so many different landscapes, not only here in Oklahoma, but also in Arizona, New Mexico, and other surrounding areas. He was very nomadic, and because of his movement, that's what made it harder for him to be apprehended. But ultimately, it was because he was trying to protect his people and also protect himself after tragedy had happened. Just past Geronimo is Hiawatha, and Hiawatha was actually a social justice warrior at the time, and also a social reformer. As a part of the Mohawk tribe, this particular person, Hiawatha, was an Indian chief and did a lot of really interesting things. For example, did you know that Hiawatha actually had a part in the bigger picture of our US Constitution? Yeah. Hiawatha was in there and trying to make influence on our US Constitution way, way, way back, just showing that people have been a part of the fabric of our communities for a very, very long time and have impacted a lot of different aspects of change and the elements that continue to change even to this day, which I think is really, really neat. This next one, I know who this one is just by sight. There's even documentaries about this particular person, and as a person who loves sports, this guy. This is Jim Thorpe. Jim Thorpe was one of the world's greatest athletes. Literally one of the greatest athletes of all time. Jim Thorpe here competed in the Stockholm Olympics, and basically blew everyone out of the water. He was amazing, but because of the time, there were a lot of controversies due to his athleticism on if he would be allowed to do certain things. And I just think his story itself is one that you should look up and just read or watch, because it's so good. This right here is Chief Joseph, and he was famous for his military and tactical skills for his tribe, the Nez Perce. He was actually born in 1833, and they estimate that he passed away in about 1904. This next one is Sequoia, and Sequoia was Cherokee, born in about 1764, passed away in about 1845, and was considered to be an artist and tribal leader. And as you can see here, this is actually the Cherokee alphabet, for which Sequoia is credited for creating. Here we have Black Beaver, which was a Delaware scout and guide. That was actually one that chartered the California Road discovery. And as we make our final portion of the loop, it is Pocahontas. Pocahontas, of course, has been popularized by many texts and stories. Pocahontas was born in approximately 1595 and passed away in 1617. Pocahontas was known because she was considered to be the angel of mercy and extended a hand to help the colonists whenever they came here. Now, we all know how that went, and whether we want to debate on it or not, we know what actually happened after. But Pocahontas was seen as a person of peace, and she was an ambassador to her tribe, reaching out to extend the olive branch, so to speak. So I think it's fitting that Pocahontas is kind of how we wrap up this loop. But there's a couple of others over here that are quite fascinating that I also want to show you before we hit the road. These sculptures are just beautiful, beautiful bronze sculptures here. This is fabulous, being able to see these up close. There are no plaques, they're just amazing. And this one as well. I think there's something very special about having these here, because so often in the imagery that we have of Native American culture, there are spirit animals, and these are frequently mentioned, both the wolf and the bear. Of course, as I mentioned before, this is an ongoing project, so there's plenty of room for expansion beyond where the fountain area is, and for things like this. It's absolutely beautiful to come out here and learn about so many different people, and then also with that little pamphlet that they have to get even a deeper dive into the brain wrinkles that you can have. I think that this was definitely worth a stop. It is absolutely free, and it's a wonderful way to spend a day getting to know a little bit more about not only Oklahoma, but some of the surrounding areas. Till next time, guys, remember, we're not here for a long time, but we are here for a good time. Bye!